As Ryan Day said today, champs or chumps, we will soon find out here in the next few days. Ohio State football, finally, it is game week against the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and for one of the few times in the history of Ohio State football, a Big Ten opener. Steve Hellwagon's on the line, as usual, from Bucknuts 247 Sports, and of course, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove on Rivals. Gentlemen, how we doing today?
Doing great.
Good stuff. All right, we got a game week, so we can talk some Big Red. We can talk Buckeyes, of course, as we are headed toward what was asked of Ryan Day, a national championship run everybody in the Scarlet and Gray hopes for. Kevin, I mentioned this to Steve before we got started here today, that I cannot remember a time in which a team was this much of a prohibitive favorite in the Big Ten, even with the Buckeyes being as dominant as they've been recently, and at times during the Jim Tressel era. There's been this expectation for the last few years, 2017, 18, 19, Michigan, boom, they're going to jump up and take it, even though we've seen a very much different display on the field. So can you remember a time when anybody in the Big Ten was counted upon to just dominate the league?
I don't think to the point of where everybody's saying outside of Penn State, Ohio State should be a double-digit favorite in all of its games. I mean, we can go back in the day when it was the Big 2 and Little 8, but there were two. It wasn't the Big 1 and the Little 9 or anything along those lines. So, I struggle to think of a time where there wasn't a second team that was at least a half a step behind. I mean, I guess it really depends on what your feelings about Penn State are going to be, how big the loss of Journey Brown is going to be out of the running back room, the whole Micah Parsons situation or whatnot. But it really does seem like Ohio State is a step or two ahead of the rest of the conference. Now, it wasn't a case when they lost to Iowa or Purdue that either of those teams were within really hailing distance. They just brought it that, those evenings, and Ohio State did not. But on paper, Ohio State is just a prohibitive favorite to win this conference, and I haven't looked at the odds on the futures on that, but I know Ohio State is just a gigantic favorite in terms of winning the East and winning the Big Ten in general.
So for those of you who did not hear the news in the last 48 hours, Journey Brown, top running back for Penn State, who really took over the job in the back half of the season last year, ran for over 200 yards in the Cotton Bowl. A medical issue with him that's been not disclosed at this point, but that is most likely going to keep him out for the season. And as Kevin states, arguably the best defensive player in the Big Ten, Micah Parsons, has opted out and stayed with that decision. Steve, you've been around this thing for a long time. Has there been this kind of favorite in the Big Ten?
I can't really think about that. I know Ohio State's had a few years where they were number 1 or number 2 in the preseason national polls, and they were number 2 in the AP poll this year, the one that came out before the season. They are currently number 5 as they start in, and as we've pointed out, there were at least 6 or 7, or no, it was closer to 10 or 11 AP poll voters a few weeks ago when the Big Ten reinstated the season, that still kept Big Ten and Pac-12 schools out of their rankings. And I know that at least one of them, David Jablonski from the Dayton Daily News, moved Ohio State back in to his rankings this week. My guess is with a win, all things being equal, over Nebraska, they will move, I would have to think, to number 3 behind Clemson, who is clearly number 1, Alabama, who is probably number 2, and then Ohio State should be number 3. The other schools have played 5 or 6 games now, whereas this would just be Ohio State's first game. And if Ohio State can establish its dominance, get a good win over Penn State on the road perhaps next week, and take it from there, maybe they would move up to number 2 or dare say even number 1 if one of those 2 get knocked off. Not that it does not appear at this point anyone in the ACC will touch Clemson, and does not appear anybody in the SEC will touch Alabama now that they roughed up Georgia, who appears to be the next best team. So they have Georgia still ranked ahead of Ohio State somehow, and Notre Dame is still up there too, but with them only scoring 12 points in a win over Louisville this past week, they're going to be lucky if they don't lose to Clemson like 40-13, something like that, in my opinion, here in a few weeks or whenever that game's going to be. Because if you can't go out and put up 35 or 40 points against a middle of the road team like Louisville, or even less than that, as they've shown this year, I don't know how you expect to even be on the same field with the likes of Clemson, which is just awe-inspiring right now with what they're doing. So to me, yes, it is unusual that one team is favored so heavily, but at the same time, as you guys remarked, that gap is only going to widen since Journey Brown's not there from Penn State. He's worth maybe 3 to 4 or 5 points a game for Penn State, you would think, given his experience at the running back position, and they're going to be really hard-pressed to replace that kind of production. They've had difficulties running the football in recent years if they didn't have a guy like Saquon Barkley before him and after him. So I'm interested to see what they do at that position. But, yeah, it is a little bit shocking that there is a prohibitive favorite, but 3 times in a row they've won the conference championship game. And I don't know that anyone's ever won the conference 4 years in a row outright. So Ohio State shooting to make some history this year if it all works out.
And guys, it's not even just being a favorite. It's being a favorite to this extent in this league. So Clemson's this kind of favorite, or even more so in the ACC, but we're talking about what's considered generally, without debate, at least the second best conference in the nation, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the conference this year, maybe not as good as in other years. Some programs are hurt by opt-outs. I think the bottom of the Big Ten is very weak this year. And then there are a couple teams out there that I just really have a wait-and-see attitude toward, like Northwestern. I just don't know what Peyton Ramsey's going to mean there. It's got to be a better fit than what Hunter Johnson was, because that certainly didn't work out. But when your bottom is way down with Rutgers and Maryland right now, thanks, Jim. It's kind of where we're gonna look at. So where the middle is, where those Purdue's and there's those Iowas and those types of teams, where does Minnesota really go? Do they build up or do they not? So you just don't know. I think we're going to see, 4 or 5 teams ranked throughout the season in terms of the polls or whatnot. But I think you're going to see a lot of teams fighting for the teens and the 20s. If Ohio State comes out and is able to do what people are expecting against Penn State, that's really going to kind of thin out the top end of the Big Ten. I mean, you'll have the couple teams coming out of the West with Wisconsin and aforementioned Minnesota. But I don't know if this is as deep of a Big Ten as maybe in some previous years. But when I look at the ACC outside of Clemson, when I look at the Big 12 period, and just my belief of what the Pac-12 is going to be, I think the Big Ten is still the number 2 conference just out of default.
So I'm double checking on my Big Ten Western Division crossovers for Ohio State. So we obviously have Nebraska. What's the other one? Purdue?
Illinois.
There you go. So no Iowa, no Minnesota, no Wisconsin, the projected top 3 teams in the conference. So, Steve, do you think we have a difficulty in regards to already playing lesser games than the ACC and the SEC? We'll forget about the Big 12, to Kevin's point, to a certain extent. Lesser games, less number of games, and not playing the big boys out of the West. There possibly being a situation later where the lack of those difficult games could play Ohio State's bid for a playoff spot down.
Absolutely not. First of all, we are in an extraordinary situation. And if anybody tries to bring up the fact that, you only played 8 games or whatever, it's COVID, it's coronavirus, it's a pandemic. We were lucky to have a season. So that's one. 2, the only 2 teams that I've seen so far that deserve even the thought of making the playoff are Clemson and Alabama. I don't see anybody else that can play within 3 touchdowns of them on a neutral field. If there is a team that is capable of doing that, I'd like to see it. Now, I know Alabama probably didn't win a game by 3 touchdowns earlier this season or whatever, but they are starting to play at a level that we all kind of believed they would. I know their defense gave up whatever it was, nearly 50 to Kiffin or whatever a week or 2 ago, but I think Clemson and Alabama are another level. They're going to be scratching to find 4 teams. This isn't a case where even with a loss, they're still going to take whoever wins the Big Ten championship, because they're going to be struggling, in my opinion, to find 4 quality teams at that level to go against Clemson and Alabama. So I don't look at that as a detriment at all. And the third thing is, if Ohio State, and again, last year they were the most dominant team in Big Ten history, 10 wins by whatever the margin was, first team to beat 10 Big Ten opponents in one season ever. And they're probably going to beat 9 or at least 8 Big Ten opponents this year. We don't know that the margin is going to be whatever it was, 25, 30 points. We don't know that they're going to score 47 points a game like they did last year, because they're not playing Cincinnati or Bowling Green or whoever that other Miami, Ohio that they played early in the season last year. Those games aren't on the schedule this year, but they're still going to put up some big numbers. I don't have any doubt about that. And I just feel for those 3 reasons, you're going to need teams. Ohio State still figures to be dominant, and you got to have 4 teams in this thing. And whatever other reason I missed, other than it's a pandemic, and they're going to play as many games as they could possibly safely play this year. And if somebody wants to argue about that, then you're not going to take an 8-2 North Carolina team or whatever over an 8-1 Ohio State team. So or an 8-2 Notre Dame or whoever. You're just not going to do that. So the difference shouldn't be that much. The Big Ten's argument would definitely be helped if the very few limited games, the fewer games that can be canceled, the better. I'll just say that'll help their cause. But I can't see anybody trying to stand up on television and say, oh, well, they only played 8 or 9 games. Their season doesn't match up with these schools that played 10, 11 or whatever, because it's really not that big a difference. And it's particularly if you're dominant in your 8 or 9 games, you make your case.
And non-significant games being canceled. We can do with the Maryland, Illinois games being canceled. We need Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and those teams to play.
Yeah, you need them to play Nebraska, beat Nebraska. You need them to play Michigan and Penn State, who are ranked teams. You need them to play in the Big Ten championship game against whoever that ranked team is and beat them, and then you should be in pretty good shape. So, and I agree. I mean, it does hurt a little bit that you're not playing Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Iowa, who are all ranked on the other side. Nebraska, I don't know how good they're going to be. Their schedule is very difficult. The way people talk, they'll be lucky to finish 4-4 and get to a bowl game. I think 4-4 will qualify them in this special year for what's the one in Detroit, the Quick Lane Bowl or whatever.
Actually, there are no minimum standards. You could go at 0-8 or whatever. It's a special dispensation this year.
That's great.
You don't have to have a 500 record. You could have whatever. So
they could be 3-5.
Rutgers, did you hear that? Rutgers. Hello.
Some brony bowls, because some of them are going to be in states that may or may not be all clear by that point in terms of fan gatherings. And you had to figure it costs more than $1.50 to put one of these games on or whatnot. I don't think they're going to be able to clear their expenses. So I'll be curious to see if the Pepto-Bismol Bowl exists this year or not.
Good point.
This edition of Ohio State Buckeyes Live brought to you by our Patreon supporter, Buckeye Blessed. So thank you so much for that. Great job. Appreciate everyone who joins us on Patreon. You get the insider look. You get some applause from Steve as well. That's maybe a bonus that will just explode that Patreon account if I throw that in. Maybe I need to take a screenshot or a video of that. We'll put that in there, and that'll just be an extra added bonus content right there. But you do get the extra live streams, the extra content, and my predictions, whatever they're worth, 39-29 right now against the spread. And I'll continue to tout that as long as it's a decent record. All right. We talked Nebraska as well. They were certainly taking up the charge along with Ryan Day and Ohio State and Sean Wade and company to play football this year. So we can thank them for that. Adrian Martinez at this point last year was being touted as a Heisman candidate. And going into this year, he just simply had to win the job. 10 TDs, 9 picks for him last year, holding off Luke McCaffrey, who's still in the mix for playing time, according to Scott Frost. And so what do you think of the matchup, Kevin, in regards to Nebraska making any kind of threat in this one?
I think the one interesting thing is, and I know I've talked about before on previous appearances, is that defenses seem to be way behind offenses on a national level, more or less. So if that's the case, and let's say that just holds true into Big Ten play, I think this Nebraska team is explosive enough with Wan'Dale Robinson and with Adrian Martinez to bust off a couple of big plays. Now, I'm not talking about Oregon State coming to Ohio Stadium and running off a couple of 80-yard plays or anything like that. I mean, if that happens, there's obviously some issues to be concerned with. But I think that I think that they have some playmakers there. I'm not really sure that Dedrick Mills, their running back, is going to have a huge impact, but he might be a nice change of pace compared to how Adrian Martinez is able to get to the outside on some design cue runs. And then obviously they're going to have to find all sorts of ways to get the ball in Wan'Dale's hands, because I think he really is the X factor for the Nebraska offense. And they've had a whole offseason to prepare. Granted, they haven't known up until a couple months ago that their season was going to open with Ohio State. But I don't think they were just introduced to Wan'Dale either. I think they knew that they had to get him the ball as many different unique and exciting ways as they could. And I think that's really going to be their best chance, because they're going to have to go shot for shot with Ohio State. And spoiler alert, that's not going to happen.
What you get, Steve, on the Huskers, Adrian Martinez and company?
Yeah, he was in a tough battle with Luke McCaffrey, it sounds like, for the quarterback position. It was not a done deal going into camp, and Scott Frost wanted to see Martinez raise his level. I think McCaffrey, in many respects, raised his level of play up to almost approximating what Martinez can do. And yet, I think with it being a push, he went with the guy who's a little more experienced. 2 years ago, Martinez played a pretty good game against Ohio State, and the Buckeyes only won 36-31 in Columbus, I believe was the final score last year. The Buckeyes jumped on Nebraska and gave them no oxygen at all. I think it was 48-7 was the final score, and that doesn't even really probably tell the whole tale. I think Martinez may have thrown 3 interceptions, 2 of them to Jeff Okudah and 1 to Jordan Fuller in that game a year ago. And the Buckeyes led from start to finish. So what are we expecting this time? Possibly something in the middle, where Ohio State maybe gets up 28-10 at halftime and just kind of puts it on cruise control in the second half and wins. I know the line is almost 4 full touchdowns, 26 points at this point, which seems like an awful lot. A lot of different thoughts. I mean, we had a lot of teams coming in to 2020 who we were told were going to be different and better, like Pittsburgh and Tennessee and some of these non-entities in recent years. And, they've been exposed in the first 5-6 weeks that, nope, they're same as they ever were. South Carolina, same thing, I think, early in the season. Now they've pulled off an upset, I guess, of, A&M last week or whatever.
Auburn.
So, Auburn, I'm sorry, I get it all confused. But at any rate, Auburn, another example, a team that everybody thought, top 10 for sure, bull crap. Nix isn't any good at all. So, is Nebraska going to be a team that takes a giant step forward and ends up 6-2 with this tough schedule? Or are they going to be the same as they have been for the last decade, which is middle of the road, middle of the pack? They're 3-9, I think, in 2 years under Frost in games decided by 7 points or less. He is 9-15 in 2 years as the Nebraska coach. 9 of the 15 losses have come by 7 points or less, which is typically one play, one decision, one turnover, one terrible turn of the football, something that just went their wrong way, one penalty. One something. And I think Nebraska fans are at their wits' end, and they were with Pelini and they were with Riley, before this. Just kind of tired of watching Nebraska beat itself, be in position to win games, but just come up one play short. And I think that's Nebraska's litmus test this year is, do they find a way to push through? I don't know who they play next week after they play Ohio State. It seems to me they might play like Wisconsin or somebody next week, an important division opponent, I think. Yeah, they need to push through and win a game that they maybe aren't predicted to win. I don't think they're going to win this one this week, but boy, it would mean the world if they're able to beat Wisconsin, say, next week and get a leg up in that West Division. Losing this game to Ohio State as a crossover game really, doesn't hurt you, because you still have the chance, if you run the table in your in-division games, to put yourself at least in a tie for first. So, and then, let the tiebreakers take care of themselves or whatever. But, yeah, I'm interested to see how good Nebraska will be this year. Their defense has been a complete buzzkill for most of the last decade. And, even when they've had teams that could put points on the board, they would lose games because they allow the other team to simply outscore them, which I know obviously is the object of the game, but I mean in a simple sense that you can't get a stop. So you couldn't stop them.
They fame the black shirts, and I've called them the black shirts because they've just been, or the bleak shirts, because they can't play defense. And I mean, looking through last year's schedule, they give up 34 to Colorado in overtime. They give up 38 to Illinois in a win. They give up 48 to Ohio State. They played a close game with Northwestern 13-10. They give up 34 to Minnesota in a loss. They give up 38 to Indiana in a loss. They give up 31 to Purdue in a loss. Catching a pattern here, they can't stop anybody. And they lose a lot up front. They lose, all three in their 3-4 system, all three of their guys up front. They lose probably their best defensive back. They lose a lot of talent. And here in week one, going against Ohio State's offense is probably not going to be a recipe for a lot of success for them. About the best thing that could happen to them is that Ohio State does get up to the aforementioned. I think it's going to need to be more than 28-10 for the Dogs to be called off. But for Ohio State to just get sick and tired and feel that they've passed the eye test at that point and be bringing 2s and 3s in, because until I see otherwise, Nebraska's defense has been a major problem. And I'm not sure what Scott Frost was thinking bringing in his defensive staff from UCF when UCF was a point-a-minute type of team and had to outscore you and would beat Memphis 700 to 699 or whatever. Bringing in the guys that were there, masterminding that defense, I don't think was necessarily the right decision.
They think Wan'Dale Robinson is the big name to watch. I know you mentioned him, and he's going to be playing more at wide receiver, I guess, this year than at running back. I think if they can get him out in space and create a few things for him, that would be huge. And test Ohio State's revamped secondary. Maybe they hit a big one or two on them in this first game. I think another thing for Ohio State is the pass rush. You don't have Chase Young there anymore to collapse the pocket and to get in the passer's view range or the viewfinder. So you need to exert some pressure with Jonathan Cooper, Tyreek Smith, Zach Harrison, Tyler Friday, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, those 5 in particular, defensive end, need to come up big. Ohio State a little thin at defensive tackle with Teron Vincent and Haskell Garrett. It sounds like they're still on the shelf, not going to play against Nebraska. So, will this be the time that Antoine Jackson, the former Auburn transfer, finally in his 3rd year makes a play for Ohio State? The Tommy Togiai, very promising last year as a backup to Devon Hamilton and Ja'Shawn Cornell. Will he get the start? Will he be a difference maker at defensive tackle? So these are all things that Ohio State fans can keep an eye on. I think it's going to be interesting, watching this game, as Kevin could allude to, what the personnel groupings are going to be in different down and distance and score in time situations? And are they going to go with one safety or two safeties? And like they went last year with strictly Jordan Fuller for the most part as a single high safety. Do they do that this year with Proctor, or do they give Proctor and Hooker both an opportunity to play and just go with two corners? Guess it remains to be seen. But that'll be kind of the game within the game for Ohio State fans, is to enjoy and watch the various personnel groupings, both on offense and defense this year or this week, to see who is really in their plan for this year.
Talk Ohio State football. We've done it now for 76 consecutive weeks with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts and also from Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove. And so we hope we appreciate that you guys appreciate out there the contribution that they give us each and every week, giving of their time as they step away from all the things that they need to do to prepare content for their sites and do all the things that they need to do otherwise. So we appreciate their time, and the super chat is one way that you can help us contribute here. Yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson caught 40 passes last year, but they used him as a running back, a lot of jet sweeps out of the backfield. He only went for 3.9 per carry. To Kevin's point, Muhammad Berry, their best defensive player at linebacker, he's gone. And yeah, Nebraska football, Adrian Martinez. Just think about the kind of quarterback he is. He's a decent passer, but he's more dynamic runner than passer. And that's maybe why he burned an Ohio State defense that was having issues giving up those kind of plays 2 years ago. But last year wasn't the type of player against a defense that's that well equipped athletically to do much damage. And it's interesting to see what Nebraska failed to do last year, coming off those final 6 games in 2018. So they lost the first 6 under Frost, his first year. Then they come down the stretch. They come within a score of Ohio State in Columbus. They won 4 of the final 6, and that also included another loss against a good Iowa team on the final play of the game. So they had shown just tremendous progress in the final 6 games of 2018. So much was expected last year, and they just kind of fell flat. Lost to anybody with a pulse, and here they are in 2020, and we'll see what they've got. But as Steve pointed out, they have what is considered to be the most difficult schedule in the Big Ten against the West, and then they've got Ohio State and Penn State as their 2 crossovers. So, guys, I think this might be the most interesting aspect of this game for me is to see the running back rotation for Ohio State between, in particular, Master Teague and Trey Sermon. Is there any reason to believe that Teague's not going to be fully healthy, fully ready for whatever role he needs to play?
I mean, I think he's going to go. I think he probably would have been okay a week or 2 ago, to be quite honest. I mean, he's just attacked the rehab. I mean, he stayed in Columbus during the whole coronavirus departure, head home. He went through his rehab. He's just really just one of these physical specimens that, for as flukish of the play, during practice that he got hurt on, I never had any doubt that he would not be ready when it came time to start the season. I think he will be your 1A, and then you'll have a 1B in terms of Trey Sermon. But I think just Teague's familiarity with the program and everything else will probably give him the edge to be trotting out there with Justin Fields, Wyatt Davis et al. For that first offensive series.
Leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics. Yes, Steve, what you got?
Trying to find my microphone button there because I muted myself. I agree with Kevin. I think that, in my opinion, I think if Teague's healthy, he would be, in my mind, the guy that would start the game. But Sermon, I think, is going to play quite a bit. I think he's been very impressive for them in the time since he came to Columbus in mid-June. It's really funny the way this all worked out. I mean, we were all at practice back on March 3rd or whatever day that was when Master Teague was injured. I suppose he must have taken a bad step. It was a non-contact day. It was the very first day of spring drills, and immediately after practice, word came out that something bad had happened to Master Teague. I mean, nobody would have touched him, and to my way of understanding. And then it was said by Kevin Wilson it would be 6 full months to get him back, which would be about September the 3rd. And the way I understand it, he was back and doing a lot of activity by mid-August. And Ryan Day said yesterday he kind of marveled at how quickly Master Teague was able to get back in there and he was ready to go. And so now here we are almost to the end of October. He said, 5-6 more weeks to really get comfortable. I mean, you come back from an injury where you don't run for 3 or 4 months or 5 months. Just that idea of, okay, is the next step I take going to be my last one, or am I going to go back under the knife? And I think that does take some time to get used to and to trust your body that, okay, I can't injure myself again in such a manner just by going through normal exercise and then getting back out there and popping some pads and being tackled to the ground. I mean, that is going to be the ultimate litmus test, I think, for him. For Trey Sermon, the name Trey Sermon wasn't even mentioned until the day Master Teague got injured. And they were like, okay, Mark Pantoni, go find us a running back. And they waded into the transfer portal and Trey Sermon. I don't know if there were some back channels that went to Trey Sermon and said, if you were to maybe put your name into the portal, there might be a place for you at Ohio State, because that came together, in warp speed, and he was a Buckeye within a couple, 2-3 weeks. I think it happened pretty quick, and none of it had happened until after Teague had been injured. So think about it in that context. He's at Ohio State because Teague got hurt. So now they're going to split the job, it seems like to me. And, I have no issue with that. I think what we've seen in the past with Weber and Dobbins is you get into a game in the fourth quarter, the guy who's running the hardest, the guy who hasn't fumbled, the guy who wants it the most on that day has shown you that. Go with that player, start the fourth quarter, and let the chips fall where they may. And so I think it's the best of both worlds. I think Sermon's also an outstanding pass catcher out of the backfield. I want to see if Fields takes full advantage of that. He did hit Dobbins, as we saw last year in the Clemson game, several times out of the backfield for first downs, one after another after another. Okay, you're going to take away options 1, 2, and 3. Well, here's option 4 that you didn't cover out in the flat, and it's a 15-yard gain. It's a first down. We'll take that. So, I'm excited to see what that tandem brings. And again, another reason for Ohio State fans to tune in. People are, I don't know if they're slow to get excited about it or they're gun shy about this, that kind of like Lucy Van Pelt's going to pull that football away from them right as Charlie Brown's about ready to kick it. But it seems like she's keeping the ball down there at least this Saturday. So, I mean, we're to what day is it? Wednesday at 3:30, and they haven't waved it off yet. So I think we're all systems go, and we'll know better when Nebraska lands its plane at Port Columbus and is doing their walkthrough at Ohio Stadium if they are, and maybe we'll know then if we're a little closer to actually seeing football.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch that comment, because as soon as something happens, then certain people blame other people for making comments, and then it comes to pass. But I know Wisconsin and Illinois get on the field Friday night, so as soon as we get somebody on the field, I'm going to feel a whole lot better about this whole deal.
Why do I have the feeling it's going to be like the Big Ten tournament on whatever day that was, Thursday, when, what was it, Indiana and somebody were out on the court, or I don't know if it was Indiana. It was two teams were out on the court, and they had gone, how they go back in with like a half hour to go or 20 minutes to go, and they come back out with 10 minutes to go for like the last little bit of warm-ups, and they were in that interim period, and they told them, well, we're banging it. It's over. So, yeah, I mean, we don't want to get that close and have it pulled away. But, again, we don't like her very much, but I think it was Nicole Auerbach or may have been her comrade Dinich who had the tweet that there were 43,000 tests done for Big Ten football so far, with like a less than 0.5% positivity rate. And some of those were false positives that were disavowed upon the more stringent test. If you get a positive on the daily antigen quick result test, I think they give you, it's going to be a DSR test or something that is a little more stringent. And even some of the positives that the Big Ten has had have been ruled out. So to me, it sounds like all 14 schools are systems go as of right now.
Systems go as of right now for week 1. The Big Ten does have the most strict policies when it comes to if there are positive tests and contact tracing that would eliminate other players. It's a 10-day to 14-day situation for the other conferences. The Big Ten has said, what are we at, 21 days?
On with the extra week for the heart ailment and for onboarding back up to game speed and everything else and yada, yada, yada.
So that can derail a season in a hurry.
If it's the wrong guy, it certainly can. Yeah, or guys. I mean, you wipe out an entire linebacker group from contact tracing or whatever. I don't know. So, yeah, I'm not an infectious disease expert. I only play one on the internet. So
you've had to.
Yeah, too.
So thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, NCIS Fanatic 21, for letting everyone know. We want everyone to have fun in the live chat. We want you to be able to trash talk, poke fun at other teams, whatever you want to do in there. But at the same time, I always, without fail, every time I do a live stream, whether it's this one or other ones, I get a message from YouTube after the live stream, always some kind of compromised warning about foul language or something, even when I know nobody has used any foul language. And believe me, I don't want people cussing a mile a minute. That's why I got to point at noon over here from time to time. No, I'm just kidding. On these, but I don't care if somebody throws out a cuss word once in a while. It makes no difference to me. But, I don't want reams of profanity on here. But believe me, when nobody has said anything that could even resemble anything close to a cuss word on here, I still see it from YouTube every time I get done with the live stream, which tells me that something's been said in the live chat. So thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for NCIS Fanatic 21. Just reminding everyone that YouTube is extremely strict when it comes to certain things, maybe not other things that they should be, but certain things they are. Do you guys leave your predictions anywhere in particular? Should we be pointing people, or are we going to be blessed with these selections each week?
I run mine on Fridays over on BuckeyeGrove.com. I also put them out on social media, on Twitter at Kevin_noon. I wrote mine last week, and I've adjusted the score once. I haven't adjusted my winner.
I hope not.
I was going to say exactly. Doing the Mark Rogers show on Wednesday is a little bit early for me to drop it. But, I like.
We'll point everyone in your direction. That's fine. Good. So you got to check out Kevin's prediction each week over on Buckeye Grove. Steve,
I will.
What you got for us?
Yeah, I know the line's 26. I'm not sure what the over-under is.
Not to interrupt you, Steve. Kevin, didn't you say it started at 21 or 21 and a half when we did it last week?
That was according to Circa. And then
Really?
Like Vegas Insider came out and I think had it at 23, 24. And then I went to Covers and I've seen the line as high as 27 and it came back to 26 at some point today. I've not been back in a couple of hours. And I needed to drop some numbers in one of my stories, and the over-under was 67.5 at that point.
Yeah. I'm not a big sports gambler. Like when we were at Nebraska last year, we stumbled into the sports book in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Yeah.
They had a casino there, and one of the guys who we work with put down a 16 parlay and won over $600, hit all of them on that, which was kind of cool. I came up short on a 4-teamer that it was UCLA and Arizona. I think we're playing a late night game on Saturday night last year. And the week we were at Nebraska, and come to find out Arizona was playing the game without its quarterback or its running back. And they still nearly won the game outright, but did not. I don't know if they were getting 3 or giving 3, whatever it was. But
you're watching that game on your phone as we were driving.
I'm watching it on the phone as we're driving from Lincoln back to Omaha, and I'm about ready to take the phone and throw it out the window because it was the one leg I needed to hit a a 4-teamer for probably $200 or something. But c'est la vie, whatever. But that's the last
4-teamers, Steve, riding on an Arizona UCLA game. You talk about
I studied every game, and see, I do my own picks for the entire card of most of the Power Five, and then I'll throw in Cincinnati and some MAC schools just for local interest when I do it when they're playing. And so I pick 20, 25 games a week. And what I usually do if I'm looking at maybe putting $10-20 down on a parlay, and again, I am not I don't want to gain this reputation that I'm this avid gambler who's hanging around the team to get betting information. That's not the case at all. But what I'll do is I'll take those picks where I've independently looked at each game and just say, oh, that line seems way out of whack. It was a 10-point line and I have them winning by 28 points. Well, that's obviously one I would probably put into my 14 parlay. So for whatever reason, that's what I did with that UCLA-Arizona game. And then day of the game, we find out that, Arizona's without two of its, top 4 or 5 players. I was like, but at any rate, 28 was the line, or 26 to the line. I was thinking 45-17 is what I've said. And I guess that would put me under the posted total. I think of 66, 67. Is that what you maybe said? I don't know.
I think I saw 67.5. I'm
okay.
Pulling it up as you're talking.
Yeah, I don't know that. See, the score last year was 48-7. And I don't know that Ohio State's going to score 48 points if Nebraska's defense is a little bit better, maybe 41, 45. And I don't think Ohio State's defense is as good as it was last year, at least not to start the season. And so if Martinez can make a few plays, maybe they score 17. Now that I know that the line is 26, I would probably change that to 48-17, something like that, just because I don't like to make my pick and be within a point or two of the line. I don't think that's not much of a public service. I want to have a clear 4 or 5 point cushion at least between my score prediction and the line. I mean, we have a lot of people in our business who will write their prediction for this game and it'll be 46-20 or something like that. You're like, what the hell have you told me? I mean, what good have you done me here? So, that's my rationale on why I think of a range and then I have to adjust it sometimes when the line as the week proceeds will change. Our game data page will probably be out tomorrow. And if I get really ambitious watching noon's Los Angeles Dodgers tonight in the Game 2 of the World Series, maybe I can get my picks for the whole card, 20-some games done. I know we have some Mountain West games coming on this week. Obviously, the 7 Big Ten games are now new additions to the card. So we're starting to get more of a fuller look on a Saturday. All we're missing is the Pac-12 game, and then the ability to get it all back on Hawaii at midnight. So when we get everybody back in the fold, it'll seem like any other year.
Wait when we have Maction. I'm ready for some Tuesday and Wednesday night Maction.
I love their schedule. They came right out of the box and said, we are going to play on Tuesdays. We are going to play on Wednesdays. We are going to play on Thursdays. We're going to play on Sunday nights. We are going to play here and we are going to play there. And they made no bones about it. Like everybody is like, I think their entire schedule begins on like a Tuesday or Wednesday or something. So God bless them. They're filling a niche. That's for sure.
Well, with the way things are going, they'll be competing with the NFL on Tuesday and Wednesday nights.
I got to tell you,
I'll take the Mac.
I'm loving.
I am a disgruntled Cowboys fan, and I don't need to watch any more NFL right now.
Yeah, that was
kind of where I was at with the Browns the last 20 years. I'm actually watching plenty of NFL, though this past week didn't go very well for the Browns. They play the Bengals this week, which is kind of a team they've already beaten. They need to go down to Cincinnati and beat them to kind of prove that they are quasi legitimate, though their 2 losses are by 30 points to their division rivals. But any rate, I am really liking this Monday night doubleheader thing, and like 5:15, 8:30, something like that. I know it's 2 o'clock on the West Coast, which isn't good. But with so many people stuck at home and not going into an office, it's really taken away that argument. I don't know what the ratings have been like for these games, but it takes away that argument. Oh, the people on the East Coast won't be home to see the game. They're already sitting at home. They've already watched 3 hours of TV today. They're ready. We were sitting here having dinner with my wife the other night. I'm like, my God, there's a game on.
Exactly. It's great.
We got to get this game on.
I've always thought the NFL could just rotate its schedule anyway and just have games available every day.
Why not?
Why not? We're inundated with sports all the time anyway, so why not? The one caveat I'll say, Steve, on your expectation that it's going to be difficult for the Buckeye offense to match last year's total is last year's total could have been whatever, because as you guys well know from watching the game in person, 38 points at half for the Buckeyes. They only finished with 48. Who knows? They could have scored whatever, which leads me to the reason why I know my prediction record suffers when that game hits a 20 or 21 point spread. And I tracked this for a couple seasons where I was hitting close to 60% against the spread overall, but I was right about 50-50, meaning just throw it in the air, flip a coin, toss up once the game hits a 21 point spread, because who knows what motivation there is in the fourth quarter and who's going to be on the field and how the coach is going to call the plays, if he's going to go for the jugular or if he's going to just say, boys, let's hit the bus and head on out with a 17-point win. Who cares? So it's difficult to call those point spreads, especially when they hit 20 plus points. So we've talked in recent weeks about the running of Justin Fields. And obviously he was compromised late last season. So David Greenshield is saying, I know we've talked about it, but has Ryan Day given any indication of how much Justin Fields is going to run, particularly in short yardage or goal line situations?
We've seen the transformation of Ryan Day into Jim Tressel in terms of press conferences in front of our very eyes. The amount of information and insight into true inner workings, and that's not to say that either of them were being trouble or problematic in terms of their answers. It's their program. They can answer questions however they want to. But on our Tuesday call with Ryan Day, he said next to nothing, to be quite honest. And I don't know if he would answer that question if it was directly put at him. You're dealing with a situation of where they don't necessarily know, or they're not going to announce who their number 2 quarterback is. And whenever you have design Q runs, you put your quarterback at risk, whether it's going to end up being Gunnar Hoke or CJ Stroud or Jack Miller at this point. I don't think that you can sit there and completely shy away and not go out and play football. But I guess to answer the question in a much shorter version, unless he snuck it in there at some point, he has not said anything of that nature. But a healthy Fields, I think for him to be fully utilized and fully maximized, has to be able to tuck it and run.
I agree. We had our call, as Kevin alluded to, with Coach Ryan Day yesterday. I nearly blanked out on his name there just a second ago. Ryan Day is the head coach at Ohio State. We didn't find out if Haskell Garrett or Teron Vincent will play this week or anytime this season. We didn't find out who the backup quarterback is. We didn't really find out who the starting running back is, or how much, if there's a given percentage yet of 60 for Master, 40 for Sermon. And there's probably about the only thing we really did find out. And this was a question. I think I was the last. Yeah, I was the last person to ask the question. I said, what's up with Nicholas Petit-Frere in the right tackle position? And he did say that Nicholas Petit-Frere was going to start. He talked about Harry Miller as if he is a starter, I think, at the guard position that Jonah Jackson played last year, I guess the left guard position. So he didn't say Harry Miller will start the game, though. I don't think he was really pressed on it. You have to understand, when you're doing these Zoom calls, you're not sitting in a room together where I can show some body language back to him and say, yeah, but, or anything like that, or get a third question off or whatever. They kind of move away from you. So Follow-up questions are kind of hard to come by, and really pinning him down. I think his tact in this press conference was, if you want to know the answer to this or any other question about our team, you need to tune in on Saturday at noon and watch the game and see how we handle all this. And he wasn't about to give Nebraska one scintilla of information that would help them prepare for this game. Not one bit. And, that's them's the breaks, guys. But I think we'll have a lot clearer idea on all these answers to all these questions: personnel grouping, starters, backups, availability. Do guys even warm up? Are they even in street clothes? Are they in jerseys, shoulder pads? Are they out there? We'll have a better idea on everybody's status after this first week.
12 p.m. on Big Fox.
Big noon Fox Saturday. Noon Fox Saturday.
One of the regionals or anything like that.
Yeah.
Industry term, it's Big Fox when it's
not over on FS1 or FS2 with the skateboarding. None of that. It's main Fox. Find your Fox affiliate in your town. Check your local listings. Big Ten football, regular season, latest first game in history, etc.
We're not going to see
Masked Singer and The Simpsons on.
Yes.
You mean we're not going to see Kansas and Oklahoma State to this or whoever it was? I know it was Kansas.
Kansas was on Big freaking Fox like last week or the week before, and I was like,
last week.
This is what it's come to, huh?
This
Kansas?
is what it is.
That contract writer must appear on Big Fox at least once every 3 years or something.
The problem was, I think the Big 12 schedule last week, I think there was one game. If I remember right, I think there was one.
It was them in West Virginia.
Yeah.
It was them in West Virginia. Yeah.
There was obviously were no Big Ten games, so it was either going to be that or something for one of those copper skillets or whatever that are the amazing nonstick that you can burn the cheese in. Probably watch the copper skillet infomercial than watch KU play, and it's going to be even worse now that their best player has opted out. So all hail the Big Ten. You may be a pain in our rear end in some ways, but glad to have you back.
Kevin, I got to think when they came up with that big noon concoction there at Fox that they had you in mind. So when is your debut?
I've been begging them for a banner. I want a banner so bad to use as a backdrop. They weren't able to furnish me with one. They did give me an adult large polo shirt, which will never fit Big Noon, and a coffee cup. So the coffee cup is being used. Okay. The adult large golf shirt is in the back of the closet. I'm never going to be back down to an adult large. And I will continue to try and see if I can get a sanitized banner after the course of this season.
A sanitized banner. Too much.
We haven't seen Teron Vincent on the field for quite some time, and David Shield is asking about his availability.
He's dinged right now, to use another Trestle term. I'm feeling nostalgic. We didn't really get a whole lot from Greg Madison today in terms of, hey, they're going through a lot of the things, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm not hopeful that I would expect to see him playing this week. I don't necessarily know a severity or a status or anything of that nature, but it's just going to put more importance on Antoine Jackson, Tommy Togiai, and then maybe what some of the young guys are going to be able to do, like a Jaden McKenzie or a Ty Hamilton. And then, of course, don't forget about Jerron Cage, who's been in the program for a couple of years as well.
Talk Ohio State football here each and every week. We've got 86 on the line, and is always the case, that's the most people that we've had on for the entire hour. So what that means is as soon as the video posts, go back and watch what you missed, because we probably addressed whatever your question was as we pretty much scanned the live chat, got everyone together. You got your betting tips from Steve. You know how to play a parlay now. You're all set for the beginning of Big Ten football. just stay away from the Pac-12. Don't try to predict or figure out what's going to happen there late at night on a Saturday night in one of those 62-59 games. Just don't even try to do that.
I ruined the only parlay that I played when we were in Council Bluffs. I think I had a Pac-12 game in there, and that was, good night at that point. So I won't touch that league with a 10-foot pole.
Good stuff. Got to check out these two guys. They are the very best, and I hope that all of you out there appreciate what we bring here with Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, and also in the middle here, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts, who has joined us for years and years and years, and has been kind enough to and gracious enough to post these videos on 247sports@bucknuts.com. All right, guys, enjoy the game. Do we know our accommodations there at Ohio Stadium? Are they similar to what you're used to, or how is that going to be all worked out? Who gets their credentials renewed, and has that been compromised?
I know we're on the line to get one home credential as opposed to the 4 we normally get. I'm expecting to enter the stadium in a full hazmat suit, be chemically sprayed down, and I'll be interested. I'll be posting some video from the press box prior to the game, just of what the accommodations look like. And as for the road, to be determined.
Yeah, I know that ordinarily they have over 200 people in the press box. They may only have 30 or 40 for this game. And basically all of the outlets who have covered Ohio State football diligently and closely for the last few years are going to be there, which in my mind, the 3 local TV network affiliates, a couple local radio stations, I'm sure, the Cleveland paper, the Columbus paper, probably the Dayton, Toledo papers, maybe Lima and Mansfield, and that's about it on that.
Lantern.
And then, the Lantern, of course, the student paper, and then probably 8 or 10 websites as we have that will probably make up the home contingent, and that's it. So, I guess we'll have to make do with what we've got. All the press conferences will be Zoom calls, so it's not even imperative that you're on site to interview anybody one-on-one, because everything will be done by a Zoom call after the game. So I guess that makes that a little easier to cover the game if you're not there. And as Kevin said, next week, at Penn State, I think we're both expecting to be there, but we haven't got all the confirmations and everything in place just yet. But, if it comes up that we can go, so be it. If not, we'll cover it via the Zoom calls and everything back here on the home front. That's all you can do.
Now, when the Big Ten canceled its season and said that was the final decision, I forget the declarative statement, but there was a declarative statement.
We'll not be reviewing this decision or something like that.
Yes. Now, they've done the same thing with attendance at the games. Now, could they not have just stated and learned their lesson that as of right now, there will not be fans at the games, but it's under review because everybody else is allowing fans at the games throughout college football?
I was on the call with Gene Smith on Monday, and that was kind of the way he left it, that they were going to review this on a week-to-week basis. And, I think the first group that would be allowed back in at Ohio State would be the band and the cheerleaders and Brutus Buckeye, and then maybe a few students and maybe a few fans at large. But as of right now, no students, no fans, no band, no cheerleaders. So just strictly 600 family members of players and coaches from Ohio State, 400 family members of players and coaches for Nebraska, and another 500 to 600 people who are university officials, athletic department, the television crew, Big Ten, anybody who's there, medical, security, police, media. That adds up to about 600 more people.
Few concessions, it's just going to be
concessions, So it's that's the way it's breaking down this week. I agree with you, Mark. I think there's two things. One, I think they're going to run this in a vacuum, and if their protocols hold, you would hope that there's no cancellations all season long, and it's clean, and they're able to do it safely. And if they're able to do that, then the last 2 to 4 weeks, why not invite people into the stands who can infect your players anyway because they're more than 6 feet away? What you run the risk of then, though, however, is outbreaks connected to the games with people sitting next to each other and whatever. But, so be it. We can live with that, I guess. I'm joking. But I think that's the first thing, is kind of like what's driving all of this. Again, I don't think it's a money issue. I think it's more of a safety and health issue at this point. They don't even want people parking in the parking lot outside and tailgating, which you think would be a perfect place to set up your TV and watch college football all day outside the stadium where you've done it for 20 some years. But they're not even allowing that. They don't want people to congregate near the stadium. So hopefully as we get into this, it'll open up a little bit. But the problem that we're having is we're going through spikes right now in a lot of these states, and the numbers are going up supposedly, and that's not going to lead them to lessen things, I don't think, anytime soon.
No.
Again, a 76th edition of Ohio State Buckeyes Live, brought to you by our Patreon supporter, Buckeye Blessed. Join me on Patreon. Just search MarkRogersTV. You get the insider look, the score predictions on the games, 39-29 against the spread, and exclusive live streams and content as well. For Steve Hillwagon of Bucknuts and Kevin Noon of Buckeye Grove, this is Buckeyes Live, and we will recap, of course, Nebraska and look forward to Penn State next week. See you soon.
Come to Penn State.